In just the past minutes, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has delivered his keynote address as the Shangri-La Dialogue gets underway in Singapore. He addressed various issues affecting regional stability, from the war in Ukraine to tensions in the Indo-Pacific. Now, he says this is a problem shared by all nations.
No country or region in the world can shrug this off as someone else's problem. It is a situation that shakes the very foundations of the international order, which every country and individual gathered here today should regard as their own affair.
Mr. Kishida highlighted the friendship Japan has forged with the Southeast Asian countries. He says Tokyo is keen to work with the region to ensure peace and prosperity.
I would like to continue to work hand in hand with the leaders of ASEAN countries to deepen discussions on ways to ensure peace and prosperity in the region. Along with ASEAN countries, Pacific Island countries are also important partners for the realization of FOIP, or Free and Open Indo-Pacific. We will contribute to strengthening the foundation for their sustainable and resilient economic development, including addressing the existential challenge of climate change.
Michio Ishida joins us live now from Tokyo. Mitch, Mr. Kishida has strongly opposed Russia's invasion of Ukraine in the past. How do you feel he framed that approach in his speech tonight?
Well, he did strongly continue to condemn Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, especially for its attempt to change the status quo. But in addition, he mentioned about Russia discussing the possibility of using nuclear weapons. And this, he says, that could be a threat to the world because it can prompt other nations to possess nuclear weapons. So it will go opposite of the way things should be of, trying to create a non-nuclear world. And he also mentioned about Russia's veto power in the United Nations Security Council. Japan has been elected as a non-permanent member of the Security Council starting from January, and Japan wants to play a role in reforming the United Nations. Now, Japan has slapped various sanctions on Russia, especially in line with how the G7 nations have been reacting. For example, it's frozen assets of 11 Russian banks. It's halted imports of major Russian goods and exporting Japanese luxury goods to Russia. But it has caused problems in terms of Japan-Russia relationship. Obviously, Japan wanted Russia to return its 4 islands off Hokkaido. But of course, that negotiation has stalled. There was visa-free visits by former Japanese residents of those islands. That's not happening anymore. And every year, Japan and Russia forms an agreement on fishery, but that has not happened. So these problems are arising between Japan and Russia.
Mitch, thank you very much for that. Michio Ishida there in Tokyo.
Well, let's get China's perspective on Mr. Kishida's remarks. Olivia Seong is joining us live from Beijing. Ollie, Mr. Kishida made veiled references to China in his speech. How might those references be interpreted, and what responses could we expect from China in the coming days?
Well, Joe, you said that it was a veiled swipe at China, but it was a very thin veil, if anything. And this is a speech that will likely not go down very well with China, not just because of the long-standing bilateral tensions that Japan has with China, but also viewing Mr. Kishida's speech amid this broader geopolitical tussle between China and the U.S. It's also noteworthy that in the Japanese Japanese Prime Minister's speech, which lasted for about 40 minutes, that there was no explicit mention of China. But it was very clear that Mr. Kishida was taking aim at Beijing, whether it's over the East China Sea, where Japan has has a long-standing territorial dispute with China, over or in the South China Sea, where he questioned if the rules are truly being honored, or in relation to Ukraine, saying that there is a strong sense of urgency, given that he felt that what's happening in Ukraine today could maybe be East Asia tomorrow, a reference perhaps to concerns that Beijing may act on the self-ruled island of Taiwan, which it considers part of its territory. Also, what would ruffle feathers with China is Mr. Kishida saying about being prepared for the emergence of a, quote, an entity that tramples on the peace and security of other countries by force or threat without honoring the rules, and therefore saying that Japan needs to step up its deterrence and response capabilities, also saying that he would seek a larger defense budget, that likely to be of concern to China, especially as Japan draws closer to the United States. And the use of the term preventing unilateral changes to the status quo by force was repeated in that speech by the Japanese Prime Minister a few times, a phrase that has been used by the Quad alliance that's led by the U.S., which has been viewed by China as a means in which to contain its rise. So if it was anything to go by, this was something that China had anticipated, and we had seen already in state media prior to Mr. Kishida's speech that the Chinese state media was saying that Mr. Kishida would be fanning the flames on the platform, misleading the agenda, and using this as an opportunity to increase its military spending and coordination with the U.S.
All right, Olivia Seong with that update from Beijing. Thank you.